Good morning, Precalc. This is 5.2, Apex Semester 2. So we're going to start. Yesterday we did law of cosines. Today we're going to do law of sines. So for law of sines, it's not too bad. So you have sine of an angle over the side opposite. Sine of an angle over the side opposite, sine of an angle over the side opposite. So you notice there's two equal signs in here. So we only need two of these equations or expressions to be able to solve this. Okay, so we might not use sine of b over b, or we might not use sine of a over a. Okay, sometimes we get to choose, sometimes we have information, so we have to do it one way or the other. Okay, so let's take a look at this problem right here. So it says find x. So that's my side length. That means that's my angle. So I know I have to use sine of 60 over x equals, and I know this angle measure and this side length. So I would use sine of 45 over 14. Okay, now to solve this, I'm going to simply cross multiply and solve. So I get 14 sine of 60 equals x times sine of 45. To get the x by itself, I'm going to have to divide by sine of 45 on both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to come up with an x value of, let's see, yeah, that is 60. Okay, so I'm going to just plug it into my calculator. 14 times sine of 60 divided by sine of 45, and I come up with about 17.1. Okay, so x is approximately 17.1. Okay, that's it. That's all I have to do. Okay. So this next one says to find x and h. Okay. So here's h, here's x. So in order to find h, I need this angle measure. Well, I know these two angle measures. So in this case, I can go ahead and find that third angle measure. So I'm going to do 180 minus 72 minus 48, and that gives me 60 degrees. Okay, so that's what's left. Now, anytime I'm using law of sines, I always want to try and find the biggest side length first. Right? So remember that sides and angle measures are proportionate. So this is the biggest side length, which means this is going to be the longest side. This is the smallest angle, which means this is going to be the shortest side. And this one is the middle. Okay? So I'm going to start by finding x. So I have sine of 72 over x equals, well, I don't want to use 60 and h because I don't know h, but I know 48 and 55. So I'm going to set it as sine of 48 over 55. Okay, so remember, we can't solve at this point with two unknowns. Okay, so we want one unknown at a time. Okay, so now same thing, I'm going to cross multiply, and I get 55 times sine of 72 equals x times sine of 48. Divide both sides by sine of 48. And I'm going to wind up with x equals, when I plug this into my calculator, I am going to get, let's see, 55 times sine of 72 divided by sine of 48, and that gives me 70.4. So we'll say 70.4 meters. So that's my x value. Now I'm going to find h. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. And I almost always, if I have one that's already given the angle and the side, I almost always use that because here I've rounded. Okay, it doesn't really matter, but just, that's my preference. So I'm going to use sine of 48, okay, over 55 equals sine of 60 over h. Okay, I'm going to cross multiply. So I don't always rewrite it, okay, but if you struggle, make sure that you rewrite it. So I'm going to do 55 times sine of 60 divided by sine of 48. Okay, so I call this the odd man out. So I multiply the two that are across from each other and divide by the odd man out. Okay, so, and that gives me that h is approximately 64.1. Okay, about 64.1 meters. Okay. So now I found both my x and my h values. Okay, so law of sines, not too bad. However, when we're working with law of sines, we sometimes have what's called the ambiguous case. Okay. So let's take a look at some problems and how the ambiguous case, no solution case, and two solution case works. So the ambiguous case means that there's only one solution. Okay, so here it says side A is greater than side B. So let's go ahead and draw a picture. So it says a pole. So here's my pole, and it tilts towards the sun at an angle of 8 degrees. Okay, so from vertical, my angle is 8 degrees. Okay, and my sun is, somewhere up here. It casts a 22-foot shadow. Okay, so this is 22 feet. And the angle of elevation, so remember, angle of elevation, okay, is from a horizontal looking up, and it says from the tip of my shadow to the top of the pole is 43 degrees. And we want to know how tall the pole is. So now I need to find some missing information. Okay. So in this case, if this is 43, I can find another angle measure because that's 90 minus 8, and that gives me 82 degrees. Okay. And then I can find my third angle measure by doing 180 minus 82 minus that 43, and that leaves me with 55 degrees. All right, so now I'm going to go on ahead and solve for x. Okay. So here, because we are given all of the angle measures, there can only be one case. Okay, I don't really pay attention to this A is greater than B. Okay, but what that means is that here, this is going to be greater than the one we're finding. Okay, that's all that means. So if the one that we know is greater than the one we're finding, okay, so this is the one we know, and this is the one we're finding, and then there's only one solution. The reason is, okay, that I know that this one has to be greater is because remember the ratio, okay, the bigger the angle measure, the longer the side length. So here I know 22 is going to have to be longer than this because of this angle, okay, because of the angles. All right, so now I'm going to do sine of 55 over 22 equals sine of 43 over x. And now, once again, I'm going to cross multiply and solve. So I get 22 times sine of 55 divided by, wait, what did I do? I lied, not sine of 55. 22 times sine of 43 divided by sine of 55. Okay, and I'm going to get 18.3. So x is approximately 18.3. Okay. So if what we know is longer than the one we're finding, okay, then we're good. Okay, so let's take a look here. So the no solution case. So let's draw a picture. Okay, so it gives us a triangle here and it calls it A, B, C. How do I know that? Well, because it gives me a side length A and a side length B. I could call it ABX, but why when I can call it C? All right, so angle A is 85 degrees. Side A is 15 and side B is 25. Okay, so now I have two side lengths that I know and one angle measure. So I have to find at least another angle measure before I can do anything else. Okay, I could use law of cosines, but I don't have to. Okay, so I can actually find this angle measure because I know the side opposite it. Okay. So I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to use sine of 25 over sine of B, I lied, over 25. I start doing this too fast and then I start talking and writing and right, and then equals sine of 85 over 15. Okay, so now let's go on ahead and solve. So we're going to cross multiply. Okay, so I'm going to have 25 sine of 85, and I'm going to write this one out just because this one we're going to have to do an inverse operation on it. Okay, divide by 15. Okay, so I'm going to go on ahead and plug this in. So 25 times sine of 85. Divide that by 15, and I get approximately 1.66 equals sine of B. So now I have to take the inverse of both sides. right? Which means that these cancel. You know, let's think back to our trig circle, our unit circle, okay? What is the highest value sign can have in our unit circle? Well, the highest value it can have is 1. So if I plug in inverse sine of that answer, I'm going to get an error because my domain is not valid. Okay? Sine, we cannot have the sign of a value bigger than 1. So in this case, there is no solution. In other words, there are no triangles that can fit these measurements. Okay, so once again, I don't remember this. Okay, if I get an error, okay, then I know then there's no triangle that can fit this case. And now let's take a look at the very last one. Okay, so the very last one here, it says H is less than A is less than B, where H equals B sine of A. Once again, I don't memorize that. That's a lot of stuff to memorize. So let's go ahead and let's draw our triangle ABC. And I'm going to draw it just a little bit bigger so that you guys can see it a little bit better. All right. So here's A, here's B, here's C. So angle A is 20.5. Okay. Angle B, we don't know. Side A is 12 and side B is 31. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and find our angle B right off the bat here. Okay. So for angle B, okay, we're going to use law of sines. Okay. So we're going to use sine of B over 31 equals sine of 20.5 over 12. Okay, we're going to cross multiply and solve. So we get sine of 20.5 times 31 over 12 equals sine of B, and then take the inverse sine of both sides. Okay, so I'm just going to type that in my calculator. 31 times sine of 20.5 divided by 12. Make sure if you're entering this all in at work once that you close your parentheses. Okay? I don't usually do it all at once. I just hit enter to get an answer and then finish it. But remember that you have to close those parentheses if you are going to do the division right there with it. Okay, and then I'm going to take the inverse sine of that answer. And it gives me 64.8. Okay, so I get angle B equals 64.8 degrees. Okay, let's go on ahead and let's find C. Okay, let's find angle C. And then we'll find side C next. Okay, so angle C, I know that it's 180 minus 64.8. And that leaves me with 115, minus 20.5. Okay, and that leaves me with 94.7. Okay, if this is 64.8. Okay, well, if you look, this in this case is actually the middle value. It's not the biggest, it's not the smallest, it's the middle angle, and it's the mid-side length. If you ever come up with an angle that is and that's why we say always find the biggest angle first, okay, when you're using sine, or why we say recommend it. Okay? If you ever come up with the middle angle here, you're going to have a second triangle. Okay, because this could be the middle, it could be the biggest. Okay? So in this case, we're going to have to draw a second triangle. All of the given information is the same. Okay, so this will be 31, and this will still be 12. Okay, but now this angle B is going to be that 180 degrees minus what I got here. Okay, minus 64.8, and that's going to leave me with 115.2. Okay, so now we've got two triangles. We've got one case where this is the middle and one case where this is the end. Now I want you to go on ahead and plug this in. So pretend like you're finding side B. So do sine of 115.2 over side B equals sine of 20.5 over 12 and see what you get. Well, you're going to get that B equals about 31, right? Depending on your rounding and based on our rounding here, it might be a little bit off. But you'll notice that both of these angle measures give us 31. Okay, so that's a good way to double check. Okay, but if you find out when you do this that it is the middle side length, then you're going to have another triangle. Okay? So now we need to go on ahead and finish solving this thing. So we're going to say sine of 94.7 over side C equals sine of, I usually just use, like I said, the one with the information I already have. Okay. So when I do this, I get that side C equals 34.2. Okay, and same thing here. So now I can find my side C. So I'm going to say 180 minus that 115.2 minus that 20.5, and it leaves me with 44.3 degrees. And so now I'm going to set it up. A sine of 20.5 over 12 equals sine of 44.3 over C, which gives me C is approximately a length of 23.9. So once again, these traded places. So here, this was the longest, okay, and here it's the middle, okay, at 23.9. Okay, so really pay attention to that. Another thing to pay attention to on the worksheet, one of the worksheets, you might get something really small, you know, a 2, a 3 degree angle. That's okay. Remember, as long as there is any angle measure, okay, it works. Now, if I was doing 180 minus, I don't know, minus 160, and then minus that 20.5, I would know that I wouldn't be able to make a triangle here. So it wouldn't work, okay, either. So if you check it and you're like, oh, well, 180 minus whatever I got for B, and you put that in, and then you try and add, you know, subtract these two and you get a negative number, then you know there's no second triangle. Okay, so a couple of ways to check yourself there. All right, so going ahead and do your 5.1, 5.2 worksheet. Make sure you know about the ambiguous case, but mainly make sure you know how to use law of sines and law of cosines, how to rearrange them, and how to work these problems. And have a great day.